I hear a lot of people use diversity as a buzzword and they think they've got one black person and that's okay, but if you don't understand texturism and colorism as two words, then you're not being diverse, because that's a whole other thing that you need to understand if you're working with black and Asian groups. Hi, my name is Chloë Downes and I'm the founder and head of talent at SHFT. Kind of how we've designed SHFT is that there's kind of two sections of the agency. So one side is talent and one side is development. So we've got Adam, who's our head of development. He really looks at offline stuff. So that may be podcasts, books, product, anything that's kind of not like a social focused campaign. And then I look after all of the talent basically. So I'm kind of their main point of call and then generally run the business and do day-to-day stuff basically. SHFT was created out of frustration, to be very honest. I've worked for agencies in the past and I'm from a talent management background, so I've worked for a couple of agencies. And I think there was just a lot of frustration with how certain agencies were working, mainly in a way of looking at talent from a kind of tick box perspective. It looked very diverse outwardly, but actually when you looked behind the scenes, it wasn't diverse at all. And I think the hiring structures and stuff like that just weren't helping to bring more diverse talent into the industry. So that's kind of why I started SHFT. And I really like having good relationships with talent, and I think I've been good at that throughout my career. So I really wanted SHFT to become an agency whereby we genuinely know our talent, we hang out with our talent know us, they trust us, because I think we can just do a better job. So yeah, basically it came out of frustration and I saw what, I don't want to say failings, but like I saw what wasn't working in other agencies and I knew what I wanted to do, and unfortunately just didn't have the power to do that in my position. So thought it would make sense to do my own thing, basically. It's funny because I think people expect us to say like, I don't know, like fitness or lifestyle or something like that, but it's not. Like, we don't really have a specific vertical that we look at. We also don't just represent people that are from a minority background. We happen to just have everyone from a minority background at the moment, but that's not specifically what we look for. It's very much about creators that give value to their audience, people who are a good influence. So I always think, if I had a kid, would I be happy for my kid to follow like all of my creators? People that have a real passion. It's weird because there's a lot of things, but it really comes down to the value that people are giving their audience. Whether it be someone like, for example, Leonie Joyce, who takes 8 to 14 hours to create videos and literally just creates like an amazing thing to watch. Or someone like Michaela Loach, for example, who's a climate activist and is spreading knowledge and information and all of that kind of stuff. So value, basically. I think at the moment, I think TikTok's a very exciting platform. I think I've seen a lot of our creators really blow up on TikTok and it's really helped them on their other platforms that they're on. So I think it's a good one that feeds into a lot of other things. We're getting a lot more campaigns on TikTok now. I think there's a lot more exciting opportunities coming from TikTok just because people can be a bit more raw and a bit more authentic than, say, on Instagram, for example. Probably TikTok, I would say. Personally, I've seen a lot of black talent specifically that have way larger US audiences than UK audiences. And a lot of agencies like point that out to me, where like I'll send them over some of our talent and they'll say, oh, sorry, none of them have like a big enough UK audience. And I always point out to them that pretty much, I would say like about 80% of black creators that I've worked with or I'm aware of have a larger US audience, just because there's more black people in America. That's how it's gonna work. There's less black people in UK and people follow generally people that look like them. The industry is not diverse at all. And there's a lot of reasons as to why it's not diverse. It's not diverse mainly because of the hiring of people. I think there's too many barriers to entry, which then stops a lot of working class and people of color coming into the industry. So I read a study in, I think it was 2020 or maybe it was the end of 2019, basically saying that only 12% of marketers are not white. So that's black, Asian, mixed race, other everything that's not white. And then it was a kind of similar split with like working class and middle class, where like about 80% was middle class and about 20% is working class. And when I'm looking at kind of job descriptions and things like that, a lot of them are asking for degrees, they're asking for experience, they're asking for all of these things that a lot of people from those backgrounds aren't gonna have. If you're from a working class background and you maybe have to help your parents out with stuff, or your parents can't pay for your travel and your lunch and all of that kind of thing, you're not gonna be able to do an unpaid internship. Whereas someone that's from a middle class background will be able to do that because they've got the resources. Similarly to that, like if you're from a middle class background, it's more likely that you're gonna have some uncle or something that works in marketing that can hook you up for a job. Whereas I know growing up, none of my family worked in any kind of business like this. So I would have never really had that in that other people may have. So something we did at Shift was that when we started hiring was to remove those barriers to entry. So we don't ask for a degree, we don't ask for experience. It's very much looking at transferable skills and trying to get people in from like the entry level roles and build them up. So whether they stay with us or whether they go somewhere else, we're starting to diversify the industry as best we can. I think that's like the main thing that I'm really proud of like what we're doing at Shift, I think. It's a tricky one because a lot of people ask me about the influencer pay gap, and I don't manage enough white creators to know what the pay gap is at the moment. However, I used to manage majority white creators and now manage majority black creators. And what I'll definitely say is that the pushback is very different. I feel like when I used to send rates over for white creators, there was a lot more acceptance of what their fees were. Whereas I feel like I have to explain myself a lot more when I'm putting like my rates forward for my black creators, where I'm having to tell them how much time goes into it. Also just the general like lack of knowledge if we're doing something like, I don't know, like a natural hair campaign where they think that someone can wash their hair tomorrow and they don't understand that that's really not how black hair works. So I think, yeah, it's a hard one because I think it depends on the people's managers and like how hard they're pushing. But also at the same time, I think it also goes back to just generally how people of color are raised. I think how we're raised is very much to be happy with what you're given in comparison to white creators who were maybe raised in more of a space where they were taught how to negotiate, they were taught how to push back, they were taught how to question. So I think that's where a lot of this disparity comes from, where, you know, a brand's coming to you and saying, oh, we've got £1,000, do you want to take it? Where a manager or a creator that knows better might say, no, the rate is £3,000, so pay me £3,000, or let's meet somewhere a bit closer. A creator that may just think, wow, like this brand is coming to me and they're paying me money, I'm just going to accept it because I'm scared to push back just in case I lose the opportunity. And I hear that a lot from creators when I do panels and things like that with creators that particularly are unmanaged, where they're really scared to push back just in case they lose the opportunity. So I think more needs to go into like educating creators, more needs to go into making sure that if you are a white manager managing a person of color, to also make sure that you're pushing back and understanding the reasons why you need to charge X amount or whatever it may be. But yeah, I think it's just about empowering creators. And at Shift, what we try to do is on our TikTok and on our YouTube, we've like put out a bunch of like free tools basically for creators where on TikTok we do kind of like quick videos about like how to negotiate or things to look out for in contracts or whatever it may be to empower creators. And then on YouTube, we've done that kind of longer series about kind of contracts and how to work. I think that's key because, as I say, like in old agencies, I was stopped from being promoted even though I was doing a very good job. I was asking for promotions and wasn't getting promoted. As I say, outwardly it looks very diverse, but when you look at the people that are at the top, it's all middle-class white people. So it was just all a frustration. I've worked in the industry for like 4 or 5 years now, and I think it's changed a lot. I'll say that because I can't lie, when I was working in my first agency, we only had one person of color on the roster. I was the only person of color working there. Not a lot of black people or people of color were getting put onto campaigns, whereas now it's changing a lot. But as I say, I think it's more so outwardly than inwardly. And really it's not going to change until every agency starts hiring in a manner that's more inclusive of everyone. If the people behind the scenes reading the CVs are all middle-class white people, there's going to be a bias automatically, because if you're seeing people use certain language on their CVs or people are coming in and sound like me, to be fair, I don't even sound as South London as I used to, but I still sound South London. And there's a lot of connotations that come with people that sound like me, people that look like me, all of that kind of stuff. It's a weird one because I think it's like a cause and effect kind of thing, and actually you need more people behind the scenes making the decisions. It's happened quite often where I'll be emailing someone, as I say, my name is Chloë Downes. No one knows what colour I am if you just are typing out to me. But I'll see a real shift in attitude between me speaking to someone on email and then them hearing me on the phone. So I think as soon as you hear me on the phone, you can hear that I'm a person of colour, and you can also hear I'm from a working class background. So it's interesting hearing that shift in attitude. Also the words people use, like attitude, when they're speaking to me about stuff. So I've had a lot of that. I've also had a lot of my colleague Adam Baldry is a white guy, and the amount of times we've gone into a room and people will only speak to him and think I'm like his assistant or something, which is hilarious. A lot of that kind of stuff happens. Sometimes I kind of like that it happens because I think it's then funny when I introduce myself as the founder of the agency and have a lot of talent that a lot of these other people want to manage. So, you know, there's pros and cons of it, but I think a lot of that kind of stuff, definitely. I also think, as I said before, I think the kind of looking over for promotions before I was kind of starting my own agency, like doing a lot more work than most people, but very much being behind when it came to promotions or opportunities or whatever it may be, and also being tokenized. I think probably one of the worst things that happened to me while in the industry was that during the Black Lives Matter resurgence in 2020, I was one of like the very few people of color on my team at the time. When the stuff with George Floyd happened, like I got messages from all the directors. So I think there was 4 different people that emailed me separately. None of them spoke first. They all emailed me separately asking me to help them with certain things about Black Lives Matter and all of that kind of stuff. Not a single, the thing is, and I said to them, if my opinion is that important, I don't really understand why I'm not in these meetings and why I'm not in like at the table with you guys. So that was a whole thing, and literally it was just constant for like 2-3 days, basically just everyone wanting my opinion, wanted my advice, all of that kind of thing. Also not thinking about the fact that I was having to go through my own personal feelings around that. I also was managing majority Black talent, so I was also having to help all of them with their feelings around it, looking over people's posts and talking to them and whatever it may be. And I remember it got so bad that I basically emailed my full management team and said, I'm gonna take 2 days off, just letting you know, like I'm not requesting it, I'm going to be taking 2 days off. And on my first day off, one of the team felt it was appropriate to call me crying about white privilege. And she called me crying and basically started reading out the caption for the post that they were going to post on the agency page and wanted my opinion on it, which I just thought was the craziest thing to me, because I'd specifically put up a boundary as the fact that I needed to take a day off because all of this team had put all of this pressure on me. And she felt it appropriate to call me on my day off to then cry about an Instagram caption, where I then had to comfort her because she was crying down the phone to me. And it really reminded me about how much work we have to do as people of color with just as an expectation, but we're not actually at the table making those decisions when clearly our opinions are very important. So yeah, that was just a horrible time. And quite quickly after that, I left the agency. I think, as I've said, I think there's a lot of really good agencies. I think Shift, 7/6, Season 25, there's a lot of agencies that are owned by minority groups who, to be honest, I think most of us have probably made our agencies for exactly the same reason, where we've just been frustrated. But I think a lot of us are really pushing for change in the industry. And I think the fact that we're all recognizable names now is amazing. And people from big agencies know our names, and that's great. So I think I hope to see that continuation. I also hope to see these other agencies just catch up as well. It shouldn't be left to us. I think everyone should be doing it. So I hope that change continues. I think in terms of what I hope for the future of Shift, we've had a really successful first year and a half. And I think the change and the impact we've made and the talent we've got within a year is incredible. So I hope that we just kind of continue on that trajectory. We've got 2 junior members of staff, and I hope that I can train them up to, as I say, either stay in our agency and become sick in our agency, or go somewhere else and start making a change somewhere else, whatever it is that they want to do, and just keep on doing that, building the company and building up other people and helping to just change the industry. Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with how things are going at the moment, as much as I'm sitting here complaining. I genuinely am really happy with how things are going with Shift, at least. And I think we are really making a change, because, as I say, when agencies or brands or whatever come through with foolishness, we're pushing back, and we're really vocal about why things aren't okay, pushing back on briefs that are just, I had a brief that was blatantly racist the other day, and I literally had to tell the people this is racist, where it would have been very easy for me to just say, no, we're good, we don't want to work on it. We really do try to educate people when we have to say no, or when we're pushing back, whatever it is. So I think just, as I say, yeah, just continuing in that direction, I think. I think the key is, not being afraid to ask questions. I think that's the issue, because I can really see when people come and they just decide they know everything about Black people, and I'm like, actually, you don't know anything. What are you talking about? For example, as I said, telling someone to wash their hair tomorrow when it's natural, a natural hair campaign or whatever. So I think it's, again, going back to the root, and I think no problem is going to be solved in terms of diversity and influencer campaigns until the industry is more diverse. I think that's a key, full stop, because unfortunately, if the whole table of people making decisions are middle-class white girls, that's usually what it is, the campaigns are not going to look diverse, because the people behind it aren't diverse. And you can try their best, but really if you're speaking about natural hair, if you're speaking about like Black experiences, you don't have that experience, you don't know those answers. So I think it's one, as I say, diversifying the teams, making sure there's actually people that represent the groups that you're trying to target or the groups you're kind of trying to work with at the table making the decisions. Is also just educating yourself. As I say, if you're collaborating with a campaign and you're doing a natural hair thing, then understand what the different hair types are, understand texturism, understand colorism, understand all of those kinds of things. I hear a lot of people use diversity as a buzzword and they think they've got one Black person and that's okay, but if you don't understand texturism and colorism as two words, then you're not being diverse, because that's a whole other thing that you need to understand if you're working with Black and Asian groups. So I think that's the key, just education. And then, as I say, just asking questions and like not being afraid to look stupid as well. Like I'd way rather someone approach me and said, oh, Chloe, like I know you guys work with a lot of Black talent, we're thinking of doing this, like do you think this looks okay? Rather than someone come to me with a whole set brief and then I have to say to them, this is racist, as I literally had to say to someone the other day, because their mood board was literally every negative Black stereotype you've ever seen in your life. But you know what was good about that? I had a call with them. As I say, I could have just said, no way, like our talent is not gonna be on this campaign. I asked them for a call. I said to them, like, I know it probably wasn't your intention, but this is the issue with the thing you've sent me over. And they went away, they changed the whole brief and then they came back again and they worked with my talent. So like the fact that they scrapped that whole brief because I pointed it out, because as I say, I could have said no, and then they could have gone and done that with somebody else. And like someone who maybe didn't look into it or didn't really realize the repercussions of that. So yeah, I think to go back to your point, I think, yeah, like getting people at the table that are diverse, educating yourself, but then also not being afraid to ask questions and maybe look a bit stupid sometimes, I think. Or pay a creator to help your creative rather than just giving a creative to a creator, if that makes sense, like have them at the table. Like diversity and inclusion, as I say, are very buzzwordy. And again, it's going back to the root of like, do you actually even understand what that means? It's not a tick box exercise, like it's not just having one of each. Because I think when you do that, you're then not being diverse. And to be fair, that's actually something we say quite often about Shift, where at no point have I said that we're intending to be a diverse agency. No, because you shouldn't intend to be diverse, you should just be diverse by nature, because it should be innate within what you're doing. So I think it's coming away from the whole tick box thing and actually just picking creators for the fact that they're really great at what they do, or they're doing exactly like, don't know, you're doing a makeup campaign and they're doing amazing makeup or whatever it is, whatever shade they are from like a foundation perspective, you can work with everyone. In terms of like the language, I think inclusive is a better word than diverse, in my opinion. I think it makes more sense. And as I say, stop using diverse in a way of we need diverse creators, because everyone knows what that means. It means that you need non-white creators basically, or LGBTQ plus creators or disabled creators or whatever. And again, that's just looping everyone who's not white, neurotypical, able, etc. into like an other group. So I think it's more so saying we're trying to create a campaign that's inclusive. Yeah, diverse is just a bit of an annoying word now. I realized recently that the first time I wore, you can't see now because my hair's slicked back, I've got like natural curly hair. And the first time I wore my hair out to a job interview was like 3-4 years ago. Bear in mind, I've been working since I was 16 and I'm now, how old am I, 28. Like the first job interview I ever did with my natural hair out was only a few years ago. And that's crazy that like genuinely, not intentionally, I don't think, but like I was really scared of going to a job interview with my hair out. Like I would always slick it back or straighten it because I felt like I might be perceived in a certain way if I had my natural hair out. And bear in mind, I've got quite relatively loose curls as well. So like I know that I'm even more privileged than people that have like tighter hair from like a like perception point of view. But I remember looking back on that and thinking, do you know what? Yeah, I'm really happy that I've got to a place now where I'm just quite happy to be myself. And I think that's probably what I'm most proud of, that I'm at a place now where I don't try to sound different, because I definitely used to do that when I was in other positions where I tried to make myself sound more white and like try to drop my accent and try to not use as much slang. Whereas now I'll be in a very serious meeting. I just said foolishness earlier. Like, and I really do try to do that for like, not just for myself, but for other people, because I think when I was younger and I was coming up, I didn't see anyone that looked like me in the industry. So I thought I had to assimilate to the people that I did see, which was all white girls basically. So I wanted to try to play down my blackness as much as possible and my South Londonness as much as possible. And I think I will say whatever I want, because really that doesn't take away from how intelligent and how good I am at my job. I have a bunch of piercings in my face, I have tattoos, like it really doesn't matter. So yeah, so actually I didn't think about that answer until just now, but I think that's what I'm most proud of. You know what I like most? I can't think of a specific one, but what I really like is when a brand that you'd never think would work with one of our talent like comes to our talent and just allows them to have full creative freedom. So like for example, we had one of our creators who's pennies to pounds, Kia Commodore. She does everything about finance and works with Burger King. Like that's such a random brand for her to work with, but like it really worked. It was about like their saving tips and all of that kind of thing. Like showing that she doesn't just have to work with banks and finance brands, like she can work with loads of types of brands and whatever. I think that's really cool. What I really love is when like I send my creator over something that I've like worked really hard to get and they're like, oh my gosh, I love this brand, or like this is literally the best thing I've ever heard, and blah, blah, blah. Like anything like that just makes me happy when like one of our creators is genuinely really happy with the brand that they're working with. Michaela Loach got the opportunity to go out to America for a campaign and to basically like sit on a panel in front of Bill Gates. And on the panel, she called out that billionaires shouldn't exist like in front of Bill Gates. Best thing ever. And she got paid to do that. The brand didn't know that she was going to do that, but she got paid to go on the trip and then she did that. It's great. I think it's so amazing that like we have talent that really aren't scared to really talk about whatever it is they're passionate about. We've got Beat Illustrates as well, who like actively calls out people for using LGBTQ plus people just to tick a box and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that was I didn't even work on that campaign, that was Adam, but that was a cool campaign.
That was it, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thanks.
That was actually amazing, thank you.
No problem, thank you for having me. Can I unmic myself? Yeah.